Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the member for Canning's motion on growing the ADF by 18,500 people by 2040. This, of course, is a burning national interest, and both sides of the House and Senate should support with more than words, but I'll give it a crack with words. The member for Canning did start his contribution by talking about how those in the opposition who were in government for 10 years before belatedly announcing an increase to troops understood the changing geostrategic circumstances. I just point out to him, and he's not here unfortunately, but I would say it to his face, that understanding geostrategic circumstances is more than joining a group like the Wolverines. It is important that we're mature. It is important that we attack the issues that we have, like recruiting and retention, in a constructive and bipartisan way. Now, Defence currently employs 77,000 uniformed personnel, which is 5.4% or 4,000 Australians below the minimum that we require. The Defence Minister pointed to what he called a personnel crisis, driven by growing inability to retain ADF members. Now, the Labor Party has committed to, our government has committed to boosting the force by 18,500 out to 2040, reaching around 101,000, including Defence civilians. So far, the Department of Defence has planned its growth of 12,500 people. 10,450 odd will be uniformed Australian Defence members. 2,000 odd will be Australian public servants. We are awaiting the recommendations of the Defence Strategic Review announced by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in August of last year, but there are things that we can do and there are things that we are doing right now. Defence has already started making changes to drive recruitment and retention and to grow its workforce, including, but not limited to, but including expanding the ADF family health benefit, which increases the reimbursable services and allowances for the dependents of ADF members. And that came into effect December last year under our government. Changing remote locality leave travel, which includes an additional trip home per year for those working in remote locations, which came into effect in November 2022. And as a former member of the ADF who did work in all different places of Australia and overseas, being reunited, getting home, is important for morale and will help with retention. Changing Defence travel policy, which makes allowances more accessible. That came into effect in October 2022, and that's received significant positive feedback from Defence personnel. So the opposition Defence spokesman should speak to them about that, and we welcome further ideas. Expanding the Defence Assisted Study Scheme and study bank programs aimed at improving and increasing access to education opportunities, which come into effect in late January 2023, with benefits realised from the 2023 new academic year onwards. So assisting ADF members, again, this time, the pathways for their future will help with retention and recruiting. The revised ADF higher duties allowance policy, which comes into effect in early 2023, will properly compensate ADF members when they conduct higher duties, which is appropriate, overdue, very much needed. The member for Canning's motion rightly points to the need to build a strong values-based narrative of service, duty and country to appeal to new ADF recruits. And I agree, this is a critical factor. And in an insightful piece for the Australian Army Research Centre, Ting Ting Luo, an Army officer who worked in the 6th Brigade and 7th Brigade, pointed to 3 limitations. And that was around recruitment campaigns as a lifestyle choice. We need to change that. More flexibility is needed. And finally, she calls on new recruitment and retention task force. All good ideas, and I welcome them, Deputy Speaker. As we are growing the force, we'll need all sorts of ideas. Our government is getting on with it, getting on with the task of growing our ADF for the challenges that we face in the near future.
I thank the member.